This is the Michael Bryan Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show, and today I'm joined with Julian Van Der Waal, who is one of Australia's leading authorities on face-to-face sales and also business growth as well. So Julian, thank you for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the things that I really got curious about, especially with people that run businesses, people that are business growth types, like yourself, is how you got started. So were you the lemonade stand kid or any of that? Share a bit about your backstory.
Yeah, interesting question, actually. I've never been asked that before, to be honest. No, it's not. It's not really been that type of background, if I'm completely honest. I come from a bit of a sporting background. I wasn't great at school, and then kind of, to be perfectly honest, I kind of just fell my way into various situations, and without any design or precursors, that it just kind of all happened. So come from a sporting background, and then I moved into cooking. The only reason why I moved into cooking because I was eating so much and I kind of needed work for racing, and I needed money for racing and had to work. And my mum said, why don't you, start cooking? And to be honest, that was actually the end of my racing career. So the goal was to become a professional cyclist and work my way through the ranks. And I was racing and riding probably about 600 to 800 Ks a week through school. And then when I left school, got up to 1,000, which is actually more than what the pros are doing right now. And then got into cooking and did a 4-year apprenticeship in around about 13 months, and then found myself into sales after I left the company, left the restaurant, and the rest is kind of history. So that's the last sort of 25 years in 30 seconds. But there was nothing that really stood out in regard to, some people at school are selling, buying packets of chips and selling them individually, and there was nothing like that for me. So one thing that I do remember at school was the urge and the desire to be something better and to be something more. That was definitely true. When I was working in the restaurant when I was very, very young, it was always for the family that I didn't have yet. And now that I got 4 kids and a wife, I'm glad that I have that work ethic that's been very well. The DNA of myself and my father is just to work hard. So there's been certain times in my life where I've had to really dig deep and dig myself out of some serious holes, both financially and personally in relationships, and that work ethic's definitely shone through. So yeah, there was never really a massive focus on becoming an entrepreneur or becoming a business owner. It just kind of happened, and then outside of running businesses, and I've gone back into employment and found myself a little bit unemployable, where I see now that when I work for someone else, that can always be done better, or different ways that I can do things, and that's how we got into solar, which was about 3 or 4 years ago. So I was working for a solar company, and I just saw some things that I thought I could do better, and they pissed me off enough, and I set up my own solar company, and now I'm a national 2 years later. So, yeah.
What gave you the forethought to think that far ahead in terms of doing things for a family that you didn't even have yet? Was that just you've had the time to think about those things, or was there a bit more to it?
I guess, our family at home was always quite strong. We have a very not odd relationship, but every family's got something. Our family is no different. There's some things there that aren't great, and there's some things that are absolutely incredible. So, but I knew that if it wasn't so much family up, but family down, that was super important to me. It's it's a tattoo on my back. Dreams, family, courage. Where you have to have a dream. Family's everything, but you need to have courage to chase your dreams, and it's kind of that circular economy of working for something greater than yourself. I think that's quite powerful. And I think having a legacy outside of finances and what you leave behind in this world is super important. Maybe that's why we're in solar now, but that's super important. And I think a lot of people don't miss that part when they're trying to create wealth or trying to create the success for themselves.
Where do you think the desire to be more and do more, is that just from the idea of working hard and you saw how far you could take it? What was going through your mind when you were thinking, okay, there needs to be more than just pay bills and die, so to speak?
Um, like I said, growing up, we didn't have much. I do remember times, and my parents are very good at hiding things. I know that my dad was working very, very hard, and my mum was working. She was a music teacher, still is a music teacher. But we didn't really have much. We didn't really have birthday parties, and I do know that they both struggled when um, you know, when we were growing up, and sort of almost the point that putting food on the table was about all they could do, and education. There was not, there was not the holidays, there was not the nice cars, there was okay shelter, and food. Sometimes we'd get soy sauce with rice, and so we didn't really grow up with much. But I knew that life wasn't about struggle. I knew that life was more. There was more to it. I don't know where that came from. Maybe struggles as a kid growing up, of looking at my friends, and I in high school I went to a very, very expensive school, and looking at the way other people have driving their BMWs, and whenever sport the kid went into, they always had the best gear, and we didn't have any of that. And maybe having less struggles for my kids would be a good idea, but in some way those struggles make it who you are, right? So sometimes struggle is not a bad thing. So, but I definitely know that it came from there.
Share a bit about the value of struggles then, because you mentioned not wanting your kids to struggle as much as you. How important is struggle and adversity? And I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people that say very similar to yourself, where I don't want my family to go through the same things that I went through. But then I've got the tug of war of, but I benefited. I got to the other side. I've took skills and a mindset and an unshakableness that you can't get from an easy and softer way of living.
Yeah, it's that's the conundrum as a parent, right? Because you always want to give your kids more than what you had, and I'm sure rich, poor, or in between, it's always the same. But definitely, wanting to pass on the strength and resilience, to your kids. They need to go through struggles, and even to the point where we've got four daughters, four kids ourselves, and all under the age of 7 down to 2. So when they're at school, there's that, and they're going through troubles. The first thing you want to do as a parent, and especially as a dad, I think it's probably more so from that masculinity, but definitely as a mum as well. I see it in my wife, where you want to jump in and you want to save them, and sometimes you just got to let them tread water for a bit. My mum told me constantly, and I still remember this. There was times at 31 years old where business wasn't that great. I'm 39, 40 this year, and she goes, "Oh, it's character building," and you're thinking, "Oh man."
Yeah. Oh wow, when will the character building end, eh?
Yeah, the character. I was like, I'm 30 years old. Like my character's built already, right? So, but it does shape you in a way that you feel respectful for what you have, and you feel very. There's definitely part of that childhood that you wish it was easier, but you're also grateful, because if it was easy and you didn't have that resilience and had gone through that adversity and seen the struggles, and seen your dad work so much, where that work ethic is kind of normal, where I see 12 hours of work being, I thought that was normal because that's what I saw, right? So when you see all that, it allows you to dig deep into certain situations where you need to dig yourself out of a hole. We've been in financial situations where business isn't great, and that's part of business. But if you didn't have that strength, that resilience, by or created by the adversity and the sacrifice that you've made previously, then I'd wonder how much slower you get out of it, or you just kind of give up and die, for a better term, not physically but metaphorically, and just give up and go, oh, this is just too hard. And I do see that a lot in young kids. Our last company outside of Solo, we trained 3,500 sales agents, and they're all millennials, right? So So they really struggled with when shit got hard, excuse my language, like when things got difficult, they really struggle, and they do not know how to handle that. And I think that's going to be a real big issue as the kids grow up.
I think it's a weird way of trying to be better than our past. Is weird because when I try to mentor kids and all those things, it's almost like a helicopter parenting where you set them off and you just make sure they don't do any serious damage, but anything less than that, they learn from it either way. And it's tough for me as well because I have to sit there and bite my tongue the entire time and not say anything, not do anything. And the only words that really come out of my mouth is you've got to take something from it. You've just got to, no matter what it is, you've got to take something from it that you can use, that you can do something with. Because otherwise, it's a bit of a useless experience. Where if you can find something, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's helpful, then it's always worth it. But as someone that tries to mentor kids and parents kids and just tries to have kids grow up better than me, that kind of, I would just want kids that are better than I am. It's difficult. You've almost got to do less than your head's telling you to do. Like your head's saying you've got to stop them, you've got to protect them, you've got to, and you think, imagine what I'd be like if I was overprotected, if I was overcoddled, if I had everything done for me. How weak would I be? How struggle prone would I become because I've not built the resilience or strength or skills or capabilities that come from not having any other choice.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I was doing a lot of cycling, no one took me to a race. No one got up and watched me. No one, told me to go train at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and do 60 to 130 Ks before school in year 11 and 12. No one told me to do that. I just did it. So, whereas where you see these kids where their mum's telling them to do things. And look, just because you're not very good at something at the start doesn't mean you should stop, right? It really doesn't. If anything, you should probably keep going because if you always stop, you're unconsciously incompetent to begin with. You're never going to get, you're never going to get unconsciously competent. You're unconsciously incompetent. You're never going to get through to the fourth stage of learning, right? So, my daughter, I remember she's now 7 and my second one's learning to swim. She's 5 now, 6 next month. And when they both started, they were so scared of the water. I don't remember being that scared, to be honest. I never remember crying in the pool and kind of took it a little bit easier. Anyway, so they both have done pretty much exactly the same thing. When they first started, they were losing their mind, crying all the time, and it was quite a traumatic experience both for them and really for us. And sometimes you almost think, is it more traumatic for us or them,
Yeah.
And almost to the point where my second daughter, she started to swim, completely lost her mind, very traumatic. And I said to my wife, look, this is not going to be a positive experience. So let's just stop it. Number one, stop wasting your money. Like, just stop wasting your money. There's no positive outcome that's going to come from this at all. Let's just keep it for the winter. It's cold anyway. She doesn't want to do it, but she will have to learn to swim next time. Well, and same with my oldest daughter, just stop it for 6 months and start next summer. And we've both done that and then got them back into water. And now they're both swimming. And my second daughter, she just started swimming again. And I thought, usually the dynamics between my wife is very different because when they're with dad, they've got no other choice. They have to get in the water. It's like, you got to go in. So
Yeah.
whereas sometimes my wife's a very, very kind, nurturing woman. So sometimes there's an out there, whereas with dad, there's no out. You're in the water, I'll throw you in. Like there's two outcomes. You either get in or you're going in. Like, it's singular.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because I've got some experience with sport as well, and I found that in sport, there's very little choice. In that when you're competing, you've got options. If something happens, you react, you respond, you do what you think's best. In life, you don't get that level of focus so much unless you force it unless you give people two options that instead of 20 options. There's this sense of the less options you have, the easier it is in some cases because you don't have to think as much. Is that something that you can agree with? And also, did you take that into when you first started your companies?
Well, that's sales 101, right? Alternate closes. If you give the customers too many answers or too many options, then they can't make a decision. If there's, would you like finance or cash, or would you like to put on your credit card? And would you like to put half on finance and half deposit? And you're like, the customer's like, whoa, I'm not even sure I've made a yes yet, let alone all these payment options. So yeah, keeping it very, very simple is super important, and that's psychological, and that's any decision moving forward. I definitely think the sporting background's given me a great insight to business, in regard to competition, in regard to cycling, for an example, seeing gaps in the market or seeing gaps and how to, take opportunities. That's cycling 101. Noticing where your competitors are at. And even as a young age, 16, 17, racing, I was racing, people that's raced in Tour de France, Rob McEwen and Stuart O'Grady, and a lot of Australian pros. At that age, I was pretty skinny and pretty young, so you don't have that strength to beat them in a sprint, but you can definitely keep them up in the bunch and ride with them.
Yeah.
So definitely sporting. I think a lot of it comes down to discipline, and I think that's where people are going wrong. It's just a discipline to put yourself out there, and when things are difficult, like I said in cycling, when you're into that last 5, 10 Ks, especially the last 5 Ks, especially if it's coming into a bunch, if there's guys in that bunch that can't sprint, they want to break away. So all of a sudden you've ridden 50, 60, 100 Ks, and it's a fast pace. You're talking average speeds of 40, 45, 47 Ks an hour. Then you come into the last 5 Ks and everyone's pretty shattered, but all these people want to break off and try and take the win. So you either let them break off and then you have no chance of winning, or you chase them down. So the problem is the last couple of Ks, everyone's breaking off. So as soon as they catch them, and you see it in the Tour de France, as soon as they bring them back to the peloton, boom, someone else attacks, counterattack, boom, bring them back, counterattack, counterattack. So all of a sudden you might have, chased down someone 3 or 4, or different people 3 or 4 times, but you've got no energy. You're absolutely shattered with 3 Ks to go. So that ability to dig deep into reserves that you didn't know were possible, I think, is super important. And the ability for the human spirit and the human psyche to soar, I think, has been crushed by comfortability, where when you're surrounded by comfort and, warmth and soft, and makes us soft. If we go back to our ancestors, they're sleeping on the floor, maybe an animal pelt, and trying to stay alive from the saber-toothed tiger, right? That's where our ancestors come from. There was no mod cons where, we lose our mind when there's no internet connection or it's really slow. So, and our bed has to be that brand new soft comfort pillow so that I can sleep, have a good night's sleep, and relax for the next day. So, but in saying that, the stresses that we have in the modern world are very, very different than we did have 50 years ago, right? There's a lot more stresses. There's a lot more pressure financially. The mortgages that we have on our houses are not $26,000 anymore. They're close to $1 million. So, and it's not trying to keep up, but that's just the market here in Australia is going crazy. The market's gone up by 30, 50% in the last 12 months on the Gold Coast. So there are a lot more pressures. There's a lot more money to be spent. But yeah, that original conversation around, competition and drive, and the other thing that I think is quite important is how you respond to essentially about to lose the game, right? So I've used the example, if you're playing basketball and it's 99 to 50 and it's the last quarter, to be honest, you're probably not going to win the match. You're probably not going to win the game. But how you play that last quarter will probably transfer to the next game. And if you play really well and you kind of bring back some of that deficit and you start to work as a team, then the next quarter of the next game should start better. And I think a lot of people are playing short term. They're not playing long term. And I think they will do much, much better if they start playing a bit of a longer game.
what kind of prompts or questions do you use to help you think longer term instead of short term wins, medium term possible losses, but maybe you trend in the right direction? How do you encourage yourself to think longer term?
Yeah, if you ask my wife, I'm a big long term thinker. So I'm like the how maker play. I'm as soon as there's an opportunity in front of me, I think of how it can be much larger than what this opportunity sees. If anything, what I've had to do is bring it back to a medium and short term focus where how do I just get through the next, week, 3 weeks, month, as opposed to waiting for these whales to come into my life. So yeah, thinking long term and big plays is something that comes quite easy. I don't know where that comes from. Could be naive, optimistic, but it could also just be the ability to see things for more than what it could be, and to bring a little bit more hope and opportunity. But in saying that, those random opportunities have really brought a lot of good partnerships in our over the last 20 years of business, and those partnerships have brought, that there's an opportunity right now that could be one of the biggest partnerships we've ever brought into in my life, and it could be worth enough to be quite a good reward. So yeah, thinking short term, thinking long term is quite easy. Where do you want to be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? And it's all relative. When you're single, you're probably just trying to find your next partner. When you're married, and I was saying this to a friend on the way home today, when you've got kids, my oldest is 7. In 10 years' time, she's going to be 17. And when you think of life like that, you're like, 17? I'm not ready. I'm actually not ready for my daughter to be 17 in 10 years' time. Like, I'm not ready for that, and it's 10 years away, but it's like, it's only 10 years away because she's already 7, right? So this plus an extra 50% and she's 17. That's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. Does it ever get like that with the business side where you think, oh, 10 years from now, and then you start to feel a bit anxious, maybe you get excited because you think about the bigger picture and because you think further down the line and you think of the potential of it, you think about how it could go, how amazing would it be if things really transformed in 10 years. Is that a bit of a trick for your own mind of staying energized and motivated?
Yeah, I've been in a few different businesses, so seeing businesses in different places. When we had the restaurant, to be honest, I probably wasn't. I was quite young. I was 22 years old when they had that business for 4 years. I wasn't thinking 10 years because we were working. I knew that wasn't going to be a 10-year tenure. Yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to I wasn't going to be a chef at 60, right? It just wasn't physically and mentally possible. It's way too difficult, especially the way we were running it. It was very, very rewarding financially for the business and very efficient. But, long term, could you physically do it? I just don't think that was possible. We had to find a different way of doing that. When I moved into my sales company, that was 10 years there. And pretty much from day one, I knew that it was going to be a long 10 years. If anything, what I should have probably done was cut it off at 6. I probably stayed there a little bit too long, being a little bit too loyal. Now that I'm in solar, the market is quite different and it's going to change a lot over the next 2 to 5 years. We have a very different strategy of what that business is going to look like in the next 5 years, and it's probably an exit strategy that's involved in that. But consulting, that's something that I'm very passionate about, and that's really lights me up. Solar's great, good margins, great for the environment, great for helping businesses out, reducing capital expense and residentially. But there's an exit. This company is built for an exit strategy, and that's the whole purpose of setting up in the beginning. But consulting is different. That's a lot more personal. I can see myself doing that at 75, 80 years old, and by that stage, that's an extra 40 years of 35 or 40 years of business growth and business development. and then it's going to be quite fun. So every business should have, when you go into a business and when you're kind of new to a business, unless it's a passion like or it's your skill set. Perfect example, if you're an elite athlete, you know that there's going to be a cutoff point, whether it be physically or whatever. 35 for an athlete's pretty old if we're honest. Um, when you're in business, if you're a hairdresser, you probably could do that till 60 years old in some way, shape, or form. From a consulting point of view, again, you should be. Able to do that forever. So I think every business is slightly different. And I think you should know what that business looks like as you move into it to begin with. But not most people don't, right?
It's interesting that you brought up one of the companies that you probably should not have stayed there as long as you did in hindsight. Do you have many situations like that where thinking long term has not been as helpful? Like things like that where, oh, stay in the company for 10 years and then you look back and go, started to wane and peck at my brain a little bit from 6 years. I should probably have cut ties and moved on.
No, that's the biggest one. That's the biggest. If there's ever a regret, that's the biggest one. We lost nearly $500,000 into that in that process. So yeah, that's probably the one that will go down in history as the biggest F up, if I'm honest.
So, how important is your ability to sell to people at the moment? Because your speciality is face to face marketing, which implies things like conversations and talking to people and how to even start that conversation. So, do you have any tricks and tips for starting new conversations?
I know tricks is kind of in sales as tricks, and I think the consumer right now is quite a complex individual, and they're very, very well versed into these tricks. Not all of them, but some of them have either gone through, sales programs or they've heard stuff online. So I think you got to be a lot more elegant rather than tricky. And I think overall it just has to be genuine. I do remember my mum saying that as a child when I was 3 years old, I was always saying, hello, man, and trying to talk to everyone in the shopping center. So I also do remember getting kicked out of chemistry class in year 12 for talking every single class. So there's so there's something about me and talking. I just found a way to monetize it now. But yeah, in regard to tricks, I think you have to be genuine. I think you have to be authentic. I've got a saying that comes along when I do my in-home presentations. Every now and then it pops up, and when people say yes, like so I always ask, what was the main reason why you went forward today? Like, what was the reason? And the common answer is, because you're quite transparent and trustworthy and genuine, and don't beat around the bush and straight up. And I think people really appreciate that. I'll tell them if it's not a product that they should buy. I'll also tell them why they shouldn't buy it. And you almost, when you talk someone out of a purchase that they wanted to purchase, and you give them a logical reason to not buy that, and I think you can gain a lot of trust from that type of conversation. When it comes to conversations, it just, ask them about themselves. And I think a lot of people, especially in the sales process, they just don't ask enough questions. If you 2 or 3x your questions, and not just how's the weekend, how was Easter, that's not going to lead. That's dumb questions. Intelligent questions. Why? What have you tried? How have you tried to solve this problem before? Who have you used? Why is now the catalyst for this conversation to move forward? Why now? Right? That's a great question to ask. Another great question to ask without giving all my IP away is without, if it wasn't for price or outside of price, what would stop you from buying this product today? Well, probably nothing. Well, that's a good start to a sales presentation, and that happens a lot when they say, well, outside of price, what would stop you? No, we want to buy the product. Okay, well, the next part of this conversation is just don't stuff it up, just ask genuine questions, be the figure of authority, know your stuff, I normally swear a lot more in my sales training, but I'll keep it PG
Yeah.
rated. Know your stuff, be the expert, be genuine, and you're going to go a long way to moving that sale forward. Not everyone's going to be closable on the day, and you've got to be okay with that. But if you ask intelligent questions and you get their concerns and fears and doubts and why they shouldn't, why they haven't trusted anyone previously, and then you get their aspirations and what it's going to be like in 12 months' time if they buy the product and what their ideal solution is going to be. And the solution that you're trying to provide people might be far ahead of what they actually want to achieve out of it. I say in solar, if you could, are you trying to halve your bill or are you trying to make money out of the new system or what are you trying to do? Oh, if we could halve it, that'd be great. Well, I know I'm going to at least do that. So when I come to the end of my close, and they say, oh, we want to think about it. Well, you've just told me you want to halve your bill. We're now at 75% reduction. You told me that you want a 5-year return on your investment. We're now at 3. You told me that you were happy to spend X amount of dollars on power, but we're actually 60%, 40% less than that. I'm failing to understand, all the sort of attributes of what you wanted to, that you told me how you wanted to purchase it and why you wanted to purchase. I've smashed them all. So I'm almost, and you can call them out on that. I'm almost failing to understand why we're not moving forward. Oh, we just got to think about it. Okay, sure. If you don't mind me asking, not trying to be rude, but everything you wanted, I've already delivered. So is it the price or what is it? And then when you get the answer, you can open up to negotiation. And most times, to be honest, they just want to feel special. That's what people want. They just want to feel that they've got a great deal and a slightly better deal than next door. That's all.
Do you find that it's easier when you can actually deliver on what they want? So there's a bit of an implication of, okay, well, am I good enough to fulfill the needs of the person in front of me before I then feel comfortable about selling? It's almost like you need to make sure that you're confident enough in what it is that you're doing, but then just being able to deliver the results, how they stack up to the person in front of you, what they want, what their expectations are. Do you think that that is a bit of a, not an inside joke, but almost like an etiquette of selling, where you've actually got to be as good as what they are looking for before you can ethically and morally sell it to them?
Oh, there's plenty of salespeople out there that can't offer anything, right? There's plenty of closers that can't even close the door. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. When you're looking at delivering a presentation, if you don't ask the right questions, how do you know your product suits them, right? From a consulting point of view, if you don't ask them maybe how they tried to fix the problem or what the problem actually is, how are you going to deliver your product to them perfectly? What you want to do is package up your product and understand exactly what the customer feels, exactly the frustrations of the customer. And to be honest, if you don't ask questions, it's almost like triage, right? If you're in a doctor's surgery or more, I've got Spartan as so I use quite extreme examples, but you're at war and you're in a MASH unit and the triage section doesn't look at you and you just walk in and say, oh, my leg's sore. Well, yeah, but the shrapnel in your back that you can't feel that I can see, if I don't find the right areas to fix, I'm not going to be working on the right stuff, or I'm going to miss something. Right? I'm going to miss that internal bleeding because I didn't see that little blood stain on your chest. I'm going to miss that part. So business is the same. You got to go triage on it. Is it your sales? Is it your marketing? Usually it's sales. That's it. That's the easiest way to fix businesses is sales. The hardest thing in business is to fix sales because no one knows how to do it, right? They always want to work on the digital marketing and have people line up and just buy their product online. Well, that's great, but you might need to talk to these people, right? Your product might need a conversation around it, especially high ticket items. And then in regard to sales processes, the thing that I do quite extensively is have a look at every section. If your lead or you get a lead in from whatever source it is, you book them into an appointment. That appointment goes and sits. Then your presentation. Then and and then you might close them, you might do a proposal, depending on what your sales cycle is and what your product is. Every section has a drop-off point. So if you work on your efficiency, sales efficiency, and increase each section by 5, 10, 15%. I've worked with companies that have increased the lead to stat ratio by 50% from 30 to 80% just by changing a few questions. And it wasn't even much, literally 3 questions. And all of a sudden, that stat ratio, not only are we booking more into sits, so we've got more sat appointments or sittable appointments, then because that first conversation was better, getting the customer into a buying mentality as opposed to just see how we go, the close ratio went up by 20 or 30% instantaneously. Then the gross profit for the company went up by 5% as well. So all of a sudden, so each sale went up in price by 5%, and the net margin was 5% more. So that's what a great person that can come into your business can really look at.
How do we scale something like this? Because it comes across as very one-to-one. How do we turn this into like one-to-many? It seems something that's very difficult to do at a sort of bigger scale, like hundreds of people a day or thousands of people a day.
In regard to businesses or operationally?
I think it's more like the sales conversations and how we can scale these ideas. It sounds like a complicated thing to do.
Well, it's still a process and a system. And what usually happens, your sales manager can't sell, and I'll say that very respectfully because there's some great sales managers out that can manage people. There's also some horrible sales managers, and I don't have a percentage for that, but I would say the large majority. Number one, they can't sell, and number two, they can't manage. If you're the sales manager and your sales are low, it comes down to you. It doesn't come down to leads. And then also the other part of sales management is the ability to be able to sell yourself. And if you've got a great salesperson, to make them the sales manager, it can actually be a bad thing. Not only do you lose the revenue that great sales heavy hitter can actually do for the business, you also move into a situation where the people around them think that it's impossible to get those numbers. So it almost becomes a KPI that is unachievable. So before they even go into trying to hitting that, they know it's not possible. So why would I even bother? The other part and the other very interesting part about sales management is the ability to pass on the skills that you have from a technical point of view is one thing. So talking in front of a classroom saying this is what I do is one thing. The other part of that part, and we're splitting, is getting down even further, is the ability to understand why people are missing sales. And that technicality of that, watching them pitch or watching them, that is quite a unique skill and quite a technical process that not many people understand.
So is that about the mentality of the people? Like you said, if it's unattainable, we won't even try, that sort of thing. It sounds to me like it's the story between the ears, so to speak, with this.
It can be a lot of, but it also comes down to technical skills. Sales is a skill. Accounting is a skill. Recruitment is a skill, right? Marketing is a skill. Being a lawyer is a skill. So everything in business is a skill. Every principle and every pillar that we have in business is a skill. But it needs to be learnt. And sales, for the most part, if you look at most sales companies, their technical understanding of sales is very, very low. Very low. They just were great at conversation, like we said originally. Great at conversation. They would have the ability to work with people and understand customers, and they closed a few sales, and now all of a sudden they've gone from customer service to sales, and that's it. So you find that the baseline level of sales skills and the ability to understand consumer psychology and how to close deals and the technical part of sales, which takes years and years and years, and you got to learn it, it's just not there. So sometimes what happens whenever I go into a business and I'm training the salespeople, I'll always tell how good the baseline sales skills from my training, and it's pretty much the start is always the same because I need to fix the gaps, and there's always huge gaps. The ability for them to pick up the baseline sales skills, which I taught in my company for the first 2 weeks. And some of these guys that have been in sales for 40 years have never heard this stuff, which is crazy to me. Um, Usually the sales go down, usually by 20 or 30%. And that's how I know when the basic sales skills is just not in that company, when their sales drop dramatically. And then what happens? The CEO comes to me and the CFO comes to me. It's like, we're paying you all this money. Why are sales drop? It's because the guys don't know how to sell. I said, trust me, in 3 to 6 months they will be killing it, but they just don't know how to sell.
If we were to look under the hood a little bit, one of the things that sparked in my brain is the idea of trying to persuade people into, this being product or service being the thing that they need in order to get what it is that they want or feel how they want to feel, that sort of thing. Are there any go-to phrases like you mentioned? Why now? Why is this suddenly shifted for you to the point where you want to do something about this? That'll make them think about why it's important for them to get this thing, to achieve this thing, or whatever it is. Are there any more little tweaks that you would suggest? Only need to be like words or phrases or different ways of communicating. If you be too aggressive, it'll make them defensive and that sort of thing. So what sort of things have you come across that have helped tweak conversations as such to make them more effective?
Yeah, so usually out of interest, or I'll start the conversation if you don't mind me asking. If you don't mind me asking, is a very good way to start a very um, deep conversation with someone. If you don't mind me asking, what happened? Your father passed away. If you don't mind me asking, what happened? I can ask very, very personal questions by starting with, if you don't mind me asking, right? So that's a good one. The other thing I think in regard to being genuine, and every product is slightly different. So if you give me a product, I can probably find out better questions. But let's stick with solar because that's what we're doing right now. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that because I've either had a conversation with a solar representative or they've thought about solar. If you have thought about solar, go to our website. No, I'm joking. Uh, but out of interest, what are you trying to achieve? What would you like to have achieved from the conversation today? What do you know about the product so far? What would you like to know about the product? And then what are the outcomes, moving forward? Let's say, we install it on the roof and in 12 months time, I give you a call and see how everything's working. What would you like to have? What does that look like? Right. Phrases that are emotional are very good. How does it feel? What does it look like? What would you, those are very, very good questions to ask around that conversation. Um, but yeah, in regard to the singular phrases, it's a very live and dynamic environment, and how most people, and this is not to deflect from what phrases do I actually have, but it shouldn't be a scripted. This is what I say. This is how it does. So I've got my structure and how I want to introduce myself, and then when I'm selling solar, I'll tell the customer. So when your phrases like, when this is installed on your roof, this is where it's going to go. Are you happy with that? Is this what it looks like aesthetically? What don't you want to have? I don't want panels on the front of my house. Okay, fantastic. We're not going to put on. I can only give you my expert opinion on what is going to be best for the sunshine. But at the end of the day, when I walk away and it's installed on your roof, you're going to have to look at it for 20 years. So if you don't want them on your front of your house, and if you're in northern and southern hemisphere, it's different, right? So if you don't want it on the front of your house, then we'll find another solution. But to be honest, they will be best on the front, but I don't have to look at them. So you will, and you'll love the savings off your bill, but you'll hate me because you're going to look at them every day. And some people think they're ugly, and it is what it is. So just being real with the customer and knowing that because a lot of from what customers tell me, a lot of sales reps don't even do that. They say, "Oh, this is where it's going to go." Well, if you're spending the money with me, shouldn't you have a bit of say on what happens in this solution, especially when it's not, it's not $200. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Commercially, it could be $100,000. So you should have some, they should have a very large input, and especially when you're dealing with commercial, you're dealing with very dominant people, right? CEOs and CFOs and operations managers, and they tell people what to do. So who am I to tell a CEO of a multi-million dollar company or even larger, multinational? Who am I to say, oh, I'm just going to do this for you, and I'm going to tell you what's like, nah, bro. Nah, bro.
I'm
It's
sure
not how it's going to work.
there'd definitely be a lot of people that would have something to say about that. It
Yeah.
it seems like you would, in some ways, sacrifice the outcome for the customer being more than happy with how it works or how it's done or the process. You would say, okay, you're probably not going to get as much sunshine, let's say, on the tiles, but it will look how you want it. It will end up something that's more satisfactory to you, even if the outcome isn't as big or dramatic as perhaps they'd hoped.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, like I said, the customer's paying for the product that, and they're paying for my life. My customers pay for my kids, my customers pay for my school, my kids' schooling, my customers pay for our cars. So I'm very respectful for what the customers can do for my life. I'm also very understanding of where the customer's at from my financial situation, um, uh, how they've been interacted previously, and for me to stand out, same in any situation, whether I'm working for someone else or myself, I just have to be something different and someone that they want to talk to, right? That's I don't have to be their best friend, but I have to be friendly. I don't have to know everything, but I have to know enough to solve the issues that they have. Um, Whereas a lot of people in sales, they try and be super technical or the opposite, super friendly. And I think when you become a friend, it's very easy for them to say no to you. And conversely, when you're super technical, it's just they don't understand it. So you need it. You need a very, very good combination and a very strong combination of both. But you don't need to know everything, and you don't need to be the best friend. But you need to give them the solution that they're happy with. That's what it comes down to. And if you're and on that point, if your product doesn't serve them and it doesn't make their life better, you should not sell it to them.
How do we get to the sweet spot of trust then? Because it seems like if they are more friendly, if they start to feel a bit closer to you, that could give them a sort of casual, no, sorry, not interested, and then your brain would probably click into, oh, okay, fair enough, we're friendly, it's fine. So it kind of reduces the charge, for want of a better expression, of the conversation, where there's a sweet spot of they've got to actually like me as well. Like, they can't hate me, but trust me somewhat at the same time. Those two don't go together either. How does the sweet spot look? And do you have any insights on how to get to that sweet point? And how do you know when you've crossed over to the dark side?
Oh, you'll know. You'll know. Don't worry. You'll know. And what a lot of salespeople and people that are in business probably what they don't do is review their processes enough. They just don't review it. So when they leave a customer's house or leave an appointment or leave a presentation or leave a proposal, you should spend, 10, 20, 30% of the time that you spend in that proposal just reviewing what happened, what didn't work, what did work, where did I lose the sale? And if you understand your systems and processes and you have a strong system rather than just free flow, which is not systematic, which is not replicable, which is not, duplicated to anyone else. It's purely free flow, freestyle, which is not a great way to sell. Because it's all personality based, and the reason why it's not very good is when things aren't going right, you have no baseline to work out what's happening, right? So when you're selling and you're freestyling and you're super confident, amazing. No one else can do that in the business, so that doesn't help. And when things aren't going right because of whatever reason, you have no baseline to work out what to do differently or where you went wrong. So you need to have a strong system. And then on review of that, if you're quite an intelligent salesperson or quite an intelligent business owner, which we all think we are, you should be able to know exactly where you lost the sale. Because there'll be a point where the body language changes, the conversation turns a little bit, okay, what happened there? Um, and it may not be as obvious as what you think. Most times it's not. It's not like, all right, we're done here. Sometimes it is. I've worked with the engineers and I know exactly where I lost the sale. And I was just trying to just qualify them. I was just trying to work out what their problem actually was. And he looked at me and he goes, mate, don't tell me with this salesman stuff. Just tell me what just give me a quote. And I said, how am I supposed to give you a proposal if I have no idea what's happening? I said, you're about to spend 10 grand with myself and the company, but I can't ask questions. I said, what am I even here for? Now, when you have a conversation like that, you're not going to get anywhere, right? It's dead. Like we're dead in the water. But almost to the point where I need to get some sort of assertiveness and authority back for myself. So when I go into the next conversation, I'm not just walked over like this one. And it was like, I just basically said, what am I even here? What do you even get me out here if you know everything about this industry? And it's impossible that the consumer should know more about this industry, any industry, than you do. Sometimes they know a lot. Let's say, if you're buying a car or a commodity or an iPhone, that's quite possible that lots of people know about the new iPhone coming out because they've been really wanting to get it. But also, that's not really salesmanship. They just run out of the 12 and they need the 13. That's pretty simple, right? So when you're reviewing your conversation, you should know where you've lost the sale, and you'll know where you've been too friendly. All right, Julian, look, it's not really for me, but thanks for your time, and it's been great. And not let's catch up for a beer. It's never like that. But it's just the types of question you're asking. No one ever asked me out for beer. But I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to do deals, and I'm there to generate an income for myself and the company, and I'm there to solve a problem. I don't need more friends. I don't have enough time for our own family. So,
Yeah.
the concern for the most part is being too friendly, and it's just come down to the questions. Keep it on point. If you're looking at a curve and you've got the baseline, for a better term, from the open to the close, straight line. The fastest way to the close is a straight line. You're gathering intelligence, building rapport, using that intelligence to build rapport, but it has to be on point with what the conversation and what the product or service is. Ask questions around that subject. When you start talking about random stuff that doesn't apply to anything, all you're doing is building rapport. That's good for a term. So I'm into motorsport now. I had this couple that actually gave me a t-shirt and a hat because they got so much merch and they were into motorsport heavily themselves. So we'll talk, 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes around that and what cars they saw and this and the Formula One at the moment and what happened last year. And that's great. That makes it very, very personable. But to be honest, most people that I speak to, they don't care that much about it. They just don't. Nor do I know enough about all topics to have those deep conversations with it. Motorsport's a big topic for me. So F1, if you don't watch it, you shouldn't talk about it too much. There's lots of things. So just keep it on point. Keep it where the customer wants to be. That the customer knows why you're there. The customer's not thinking that you want to talk about Formula One for the next 5 to 15 to 20 minutes. We're not here to talk about Formula One. We're here to do business, do deals or not do deals. And it's just that simple.
How would you suggest people read the situation so that they know when they're with somebody that's, look, I don't need the preamble, I don't need the, how was your grandfather, isn't the weather horrible outside, isn't it always warm? How do you know you're in front of somebody that is that way inclined versus someone that might need a bit of like warming up, so to speak, into the conversation, rapport building wise? How do you read that situation?
Normally, it's how long the answers are. That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to explain that one.
Yeah. So almost what I just did then. You asked a long question and short answers. That's it. Short question, long answers. They want to talk a little bit more, and sometimes that's even worse too, right? Because then they can get confused and they lose sight of where the goalpost is. So you gotta make sure that you're like a shepherd and bringing the sheep back into the pen. I'm trying to get them all around them all up, and I'm herding cats at the moment. They're all over the place, and if there's two or three of them there, conversations could be going everywhere. So you got to keep it on point, and sometimes they need a bit of a coaching back. The worst, probably, you asked me the questions to ask. The worst phrase, question, word to say when you're building rapport is, so anyway, is a terrible way to interject or segue. All that basically means is, yeah, okay, well, I don't really know how to handle this because I'm not skilled enough to elegantly bring it back. This is not really going where I need it to go. So I'm just going to cut off you, and whatever you said doesn't matter, and let's bring it back to me. That's really what those two words mean.
It also sounds like you completely dismissed everything that they've said. Like, so anyway, it's like, oh, so you weren't really paying attention then?
Nothing you said mattered at all. All I was doing was listening enough for a break to shut you up and to bring it back.
Listening enough for a break. I actually, as soon as you said that, my brain went, oh. So it's like, it doesn't matter after all.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, I was like, oh, wow, that's a terrible way. So yeah, you got to be, it's all about elegance, right? That just, you don't need to hip and shoulder people across lines. You don't need to push them. These pushy salespeople. Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm probably the most aggressive, pushy salesperson that I've met. But the customer will never feel that. The reason why I'm pushing aggressive, because I just don't give up. I'll follow you, tell me to F off. Like, I'll follow up and follow up and follow up and send emails and call. I'll do it for months on end. Almost to the point where I'm the last guy left. They've forgotten about everything. They even forgot about the product. And they go, oh, actually, yeah, we spoke to you last year. Yeah, you know what? Something's happened, and whatever's happened, and it's actually more relevant now than last time. And yeah, I'm just the last guy standing. That's it.
It's a very interesting point, actually. It's almost like if you can beat everybody else just by not giving up, then you'll automatically sell more.
Yeah, easy. Like, not easy because it takes work, but if you're the last one standing, then you're the last one to solve their problem. And everyone's given up ages ago because you were just too difficult as a customer. But the customers in their own buying cycles, right? The customers in their own financial cycles, the customers in their own life cycles. And it's all timing. That's how relationships work. That's why you didn't marry the first girlfriend and, your first partner that you probably didn't marry. If you did, that was just the cycle that you're in, right? Simple.
Yeah, it's well said, to be fair, and I think more people need to be a bit more understanding of that as well. And I guess as long as you said, you're pushy, but the customers don't feel it, speaks to the communication style. You know when to push and when to back off. You know the things to say and how to say them. And it all just comes back to a combination of selling, but also being a conversationalist. Like your ability to just talk to people and be a bit more candid than others, be a bit more upfront and be honest and be authentic, and all of the buzzwords all wrapped into one that just says, I'm going to be a person, I'm not going to be a robot, I'm not going to be just trying to sell you something that you probably don't want, probably don't even need right now, and there's no possible way I can do it in the most perfect way for you. Why would I sell it to you?
Yeah. And on that, I've actually walked away from deals that I know I could have pushed across the line. I could have just taken control. That didn't really know what was going on. I could have just said, look, should we just help? Should we just get it on the roof? And I've said, look, it's just not going to be beneficial for you. You're actually wasting your money. And I don't need that money from them and them to walk away and go, I've got a rubbish deal. Number one, there's people out there that make our industry harder than what it needs to be. And that's not solar, that's across sales, right? Since the first sale was ever made, probably biblical times or before that, outside of bartering, right? There's people that got ripped off. And if anyone's ever been ripped off, it's a shit way to feel. You know.
Yeah, it is, and I've experienced it more than I care to admit, and I think very often it comes from me not just saying no and going with my own gut as someone that's being sold to. And sometimes I don't know if it's called gaslighting or whatever it is they try to make you feel bad by saying no, so you end up saying yes because it feels better in the moment because of how bad they've made you feel to begin with.
Yeah, that's there's certain personalities in the world that are non-combative, non-confrontational, um, and and there's probably people out there that listen to the podcast that potentially are in a relationship they shouldn't be in, but they just can't, be in that anymore. They're in a job that they don't really feel great in. The boss kind of treats them in a certain way. Um, they're listening to the podcast and there's heaps of ideas, but they won't apply really all of it because it's just not them. And my answer to that is that how long are you going to keep doing that for? How long are you going to keep disrespecting yourself for, and not increasing your self worth? How long are you going to keep doing that for? Because unfortunately, what you've got right now, you've asked for, or you've not necessarily asked for and said, look, I want a bad relationship, I want a shit job. I like not so much that, but you've tolerated that, and you're still there because it's too hard to leave. Well, choose your hard, right?
Yeah, it seems as well like it's a combination of tolerating it, but also I think there's something called commitment bias as well, where the thing that you've been doing for 20 years is going to be better than starting something new, just because you'd likely have to start from the beginning in some cases.
Could be the
Um,
best thing you've ever done.
yeah,
Could be the
yeah.
best, and it probably will be. But you just got to give it a shot. You just got to try. Because if you don't, what would be worse? That you try and it doesn't work out, and then you find a different path. But the path that you're on, that's not the right path. You're on the wrong path anyway. So you might as well try a different one. And then if that doesn't work, jump on another one. You've just done it once. Try it again. Like you'll find the right path. The universe will provide the right path if you have the right intention and attention to that. You just gotta just jump. You probably won't die. You'll be okay. How many times have you been in a situation before where you thought, broken up with a partner or whatever, and you think, oh, I'm never gonna feel like this again. Like it's just terrible. And then all of a sudden, in 3 months' time, you touch yourself and you're like, oh, I'm still here. All right, well, okay, move on. And then something else happens, and that's great or not so great, and then you kind of get through that adversity and you're like, oh, I'm whole again. Like there might be parts of my heart missing or parts of finances missing or something's gone, or you feel a little bit jaded, but at the end of the day you're still in the game. That's one thing that I think a lot of people are missing. Like it's how you play the game. And everyone's risk tolerance is different. Definitely mine's very, very high. I've got a high risk tolerance, which is good and bad. Um, but I think people just gotta you just gotta give it a bit. You just gotta risk a bit more. Just try. You know, burn the boats. You know what Tony Robbins says: burn the boats, and and in Think and Grow Rich, burn the boats. I do think that's a scary thing. Like if you've got, so for me to burn the boats, I've got 4 kids and a mortgage and cars, and I'm the only one making the money. That's not maybe the best thing that I could do. So if I was in a steady job and making good money and I wanted to start a new business and I wasn't really too sure on how to do that, jumping straight away is probably a really crap idea. Really bad. Probably. Most times it's probably really bad. It could be the best thing I've ever done, but it's probably going to be a bad idea. Especially if you've no skill set in new business, not really too sure, you've never seen it done before, you don't have a really good circle of people that are in this situation, that are successful in business.
Yeah.
If your network's not very strong, it's probably going to be it's commercial suicide right now, and you're probably going to go through some seriously difficult times. So just be careful about burning all those boats straight away. I'm not saying that you shouldn't look behind, like once you move into, like, don't look behind, but just be mindful of how quickly you light those boats up.
Share some parting advice for those that are tuning in, Julian. It's been fantastic to have you on the show as always, and we'll share how people can find out more about you. But do you have any parting words of wisdom for us?
I think there's a lot in that people can do for their own lives, and we're all guilty of not maximizing certain opportunities and certain times. I think the hard lessons that I've learned myself is be careful with where your loyalty lies, and that comes back to the conversation where I probably should have left business 4 years earlier. That was nearly $500,000 lesson. So I learned those pretty quickly. I'm sure if anyone loses $500,000, that you learn that lesson. So just be mindful of where you're sitting in whatever marketplace or whatever job or commercial enterprise you're in. To be careful with the intent of those around you, because you might be in a situation where the intent of those around you are designed to win for themselves rather than you. That's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned in nearly 20 years of business. And that's kind of happened a few times, but that was the biggest one. And that's the final one that I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll learn it. Universe will keep teaching lessons until you learn it, right? The other one is the other one that's been very, very financially rewarding is building a network. And I know people talk about it a lot, but people don't really talk into what that actually means. When you're building networks, have meetings with lots of people. If anyone says, let's catch up for a meeting, take it. And I mean that. I've not had many meetings, especially now that, business acumen's a lot higher than what it used to be when I first started business. I can definitely offer a lot more to people now that I did, year one of business. I can definitely see opportunities that are kind of unique to how this partnership or operation could go. Although I did have a meeting the other day that met them on LinkedIn, and I met a lot of people through LinkedIn, and then we caught up and yeah, it was very strange. They're like, are we going to do a deal here? And there was no deal to be had. There was not even anything on. And I was like, what the hell was that? I'm not used to meeting without deals. Like, let's do a deal. What are we doing here? So like, I love to do deals. That's why I go for breakfast. So be mindful of the people that you meet, that, you got to be able to offer them something. And just slowly build that network. If you're new to the game, that's okay. Like, we've all been new once or twice. Listen to people giving advice, but make sure that their life and their lifestyle is what you would want. Perfect example, if someone's in a rubbish job, bad relationship, then I probably won't listen to them when it comes to other relationships or their job prospects, because why would I listen to someone that I don't want their life, right? No, don't be disrespectful, but build your network and be mindful of who your loyalty lies with is probably the biggest two tips that's been able to generate the most money for us.
How can people learn more about you, and if they want to enter your world, where can they go?
Yeah, jump on the website, julianvanderwaal.com. If anyone's looking in Australia for commercial or residential solar, eecgroup.energy. Or just send me an email. I get back to all the emails for people writing me anything. So jvd@julianvanderwaal.com, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. For those that are listening, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcast, and feel free to share the show, tell others, spread the word, and I look forward to seeing you all again on the next episode.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for having me.
If you want to join a community of like-minded people that are on the journey for health, wealth, and happiness, then my fulfillment community, my inner circle, is for you. You get continuous support from myself, and also the opportunity to be supported, helped, guided, and collaborate with the other members as well. And also you get the chance to ask my podcast guests questions. Plenty of people in there already, so if you click the link in the description for the episode, you get access to a 2-month free trial, and you're under no obligation to continue, and you can cancel whenever you want. Hopefully I'll see you there, and I look forward to helping you on your journey.